In 1972, Martin Goodman, founder of Marvel Comics, left the company, having sold it in 1968. 2 years later, in 1974, Goodman founded yet another comics company, Seabord Periodicals. The purpose of this company was to compete with Marvel, as well as the other powerhouse, DC. Some say Goodman did this in revenge for the new Marvel owners replacing his son, Chip, as editorial director, although this isn't confirmed and should be taken with a grain of salt. A total of 23 comic titles and 5 black and white comic magazines were launched in late 1974 by Seabord. All the issues carried the imprint Atlas Comics on the covers, however, a nod to Marvel's 1950s name, and the company thus became better known as Atlas Comics. One of the 23 comic titles was the Grim Ghost, the character we're here to talk about today. Grim Ghost #1 featured a tale titled Enter the Grim Ghost, written by Michael Fleisher and penciled by Ernie. In the story, we meet a ghostly figure who rides on a flying demon horse. This specter rides the night sky of a big city, seeking out evildoers whom he is compelled to punish. Unlike most superheroes, the Grim Ghost doesn't haul off these criminals to the jailhouse, however. He sends them to another place entirely, namely Hell. The Ghost is in fact a servant of Satan, hunting down the wicked on Earth and supplying his lord with their eternal souls. A soul collector for the devil, simply put. But one who doesn't wait until the victims are actually dead. After Grim Ghost deals with a gang of fur thieves, we then get to know his origin story. He was once a man named Matthew Dunsinane, an aristocrat during colonial times. However, secretly, he was also the vicious highwayman known only as a Grim Ghost. For years, the Grim Ghost terrorized the roads, sticking up stagecoaches, stealing anything of value, and murdering anyone who resisted. Quite a nasty fellow indeed. One day in 1743, Matthew hit a stagecoach carrying Lord and Lady Braddock. The lady was apparently really into bad boys, as she was taken by the ghost's charm and mysterious allure, beginning to flirt with her own mugger. The ghost too became smitten with this gorgeous lady, and even stole a kiss right in front of her husband. He also stole her brooch. Before departing, Lady Braddock suggested they meet again, without the company of Lord Braddock. Not long after, the two did meet again, but the lady was unaware, as the ghost was in the civilian identity of Matthew Dunsinane. This took place at a party held at Braddock's castle. Once again, the two flirted openly. Later, after nightfall, Matthew returned to the castle, but this time as a Grim Ghost. As Lady Braddock was getting undressed for bed, he appeared in her chambers, ready to claim his prize. However, as he began to put on the moves on her, the room was suddenly stormed by soldiers. It was all a trap, engineered by the devious lady to catch the dreaded Grim Ghost. Shortly afterwards, Matthew was hanged. Such a murderous man was naturally sent to hell, and there he met his soon-to-be boss, Satan. Satan liked Matthew's style, charisma, and sense of theatrics, and thus decided to cut him a deal. Instead of languishing in the fiery pits of hell, Matthew would be sent back to Earth as a specter, collecting evil souls for the devil to torture. Matthew agreed, and thus he truly became the Grim Ghost. The devil also supplied him with various supernatural powers, as well as a flying hell horse. There was one catch though: he wouldn't be sent back to his own time, but to the 20th century, far more evil in that century, according to Satan. In the next issue, Grim Ghost continued his crusade, and we also got to see him during his downtime. When not hunting killers and thieves, Matthew posed as a descendant of himself, living in the old, still-standing Dunsinane estate. He became known as an eccentric playboy, and held lush parties at his home, inviting the city's elite, including, ironically, the police commissioner. In the third issue, Grim Ghost met a far more dangerous foe than the usual ordinary crooks, a rebellious demon named Brimstone. He sought to overthrow Satan himself, and it was up to Matthew to stop him. For this mission, Satan decided to play a cruel joke on his minion, and teamed him up with his own nemesis, Lady Braddock. Apparently she too had become a denizen of hell in the afterlife. The two mortal enemies were forced to work together in order to beat Brimstone. And that was that. There wasn't an issue 4, as Atlas Comics suddenly went out of business in early 1975. All Atlas titles were, as a result, cancelled, and the company's line of characters disappeared from the comic scene, including the Grim Ghost. However, Atlas was revived in 2010, 35 years later, by Goodman's grandson, Jason Goodman. This time around there were far less titles, but Grim Ghost was among them. His second series ran for 7 issues, and it was in fact a mini-series, not an ongoing. It was primarily written by Tony Isabella, who wrote the third issue of the original series, and primarily penciled by 90s Batman artist Kelly Jones. This series is not a continuation of the original run, but actually a reboot. This time around, Matthew is played up to be a more more heroic character, or so it seems at first. His new origin story portrays him as a Robin Hood figure, robbing the rich and sharing the loot with the poor. Matthew was also given a rivalry with Lord Braddock, not his wife. In fact, Matthew and Lady Braddock were shown to be lovers. When Lord Braddock eventually caught the Grim Ghost, he not only hanged him, but also his own wife, knowing of their love. It is Lord Braddock who is the truly evil and despicable character in this version. When Matthew dies, he doesn't end up serving Satan, but instead becomes a protector of the fringe, a sort of limbo between the living and the dead. As the Grim Ghost, he helps people cross over to the other side, and also fends off demons wishing to devour the souls of these dead. Lord Braddock, long deceased himself, has become one of these demons, and continues to serve as Matthew's nemesis in the afterlife. However, later in the series, it's revealed that Matthew hasn't been passing on these lost souls. He's actually been imprisoning them, harnessing the power of countless souls combined. Once powerful enough, he plans to use this might to storm the gates of heaven and fetch his beloved Lady Braddock, who resides there. In the end though, the Grim Ghost saw the error of his ways and redeemed himself. After this miniseries, the character returned in Atlas Unified, a crossover event with several other Atlas characters. It only lasted 3 issues though, until it was cancelled. We haven't seen the Grim Ghost since then, nor any of the other Atlas heroes. This was in 2012. I'm not sure what happened to Atlas Comics, but they sure don't seem to be around any longer. The revival was a failure, just like the initial launch. It's a shame Atlas Comics bombed the way they did back in the 70s. Just imagine if they had been a success, how different the landscape of comics would have looked today. There wouldn't only be Marvel and DC, but 3 big comic companies, 3 sets of classic superheroes and villains. Grim Ghost here certainly showed that Atlas had a lot of potential too. I mean, this is a great character. He's an evil villain who's forced to do good. Well, sort of good. Just imagine all the character building you could have done with that. Over time, he could start to feel less forced to fight evil and actually want to do it. He could also begin to question Satan, grow an actual conscience. Of course, his former past as a villain is what makes his character so special. Here's a guy who can actually sympathize with the crooks he busts. We get amusing scenes where he compliments his prey on a well-executed heist, or offers some actual critique. His own experiences as a knave shines through here, and it's very entertaining. The Grim Ghosts certainly stand out among other comic heroes. Most of them, especially back in the 70s, were goody-goods, but not this guy. Maybe that's not for everybody. Some people obviously don't want their heroes so amoral, but me being such a big fan of villains, I just find the Ghost to be absolutely fascinating. I love heroes who become villains, like Two-Face and Sinestro, but the same goes for the opposite, villains who become heroes. Besides all of that, there's plenty of superficial things I like about the Grim Ghost, like for example its name. That's a pretty cool name, and also its design. The spooky mask looks great, and the flying devil horse is cool. Grim Ghost clearly also inspired some later comic book characters, like Spawn. This guy was the original Spawn. Anyway, in my opinion, the 70s run is the true Grim Ghost. The second series isn't bad, but it also isn't too great. I recommend you stick with the original, an awesome Bronze Age comic with a very unique hero, if you can even call him that. If there's one problem with the character, it's that no ordinary crook stands a chance against him. He just waves his finger and poof, they're on their way down to Satan. That's how easy it is for him. Of course, they solved that by the 3rd issue when they introduced Brimstone, a powerful demon. Obviously, if the series had continued, we would have gotten more of these types of foes. I can just imagine all the various supernatural villains you could have had him face. Bringing back Lady Braddock was also interesting, and who knows how their relationship would have evolved. Would they stay bitter enemies? Maybe she was even being set up as his arch nemesis. Or would they eventually bury the past and become friends, or even lovers? Of course, we'll never know. And then there's Satan. Now there's a supporting character for ya. Batman has Alfred, Spider-Man has Aunt May, and the Grim Ghost has Satan himself. So there you have it. That is the story of the Grim Ghost. A great character who sadly never really got a chance. It's too late now, and no additional revival can change that. It is, after all, the original series that should have continued. And while yes, you could just make a continuation instead of a reboot, it wouldn't be the same. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.